Hi, Acadiana. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker taking a look at the Friday winter weather update. This is January 17th. That way you know about what time this is posted and what computer models we're using. But after yesterday's winter weather update, we were starting to lose a little bit of confidence that we were going to be seeing wintry precip here in Acadiana. But today, pretty much all the models have flopped their way right back into winter mode, and we've got at least a little bit of agreement. And you're going to be seeing this a little bit more as we get closer to the event, which right now seems to be scheduled for about Tuesday. So there are a lot of moving parts with this particular system, and there still are going to be some significant changes between now and Tuesday. But what you will notice is the models will be coming into more agreement. We'll start to be able to peek at some of that Tuesday weather in some of our medium range models that will really start to stretch out to that point probably later tonight going into tomorrow. And then as we get into the end of the weekend and maybe into Monday, Martin Luther King Day, we'll most likely be seeing those high resolution models that are short range that will give us a little bit more detail. And those, of course, run hourly, so we get new updates a lot more often. So let's go through all the different moving parts first of all, and kind of let you know what to expect first of all. So today, what we're seeing is we've got some moisture that's coming in the upper levels, and that's bringing in some cloud cover around the region. And eventually, we're going to be seeing a low pressure system develop out in here, and that's going to be kind of pushing off toward the east. So with that, that's going to be pulling a cold front through the area sometime probably later tonight or going into Saturday. But the air mass that's back here is more of in Pacific in nature. So we're not going to see a huge cool down initially, but we will be seeing some showers developing tonight, and those will linger into tomorrow morning. Then farther down the road, that's when we're going to be starting to watch the Arctic air that's up here to the north. It's really a lot farther to the north. And in fact, let's take a look at the Canadian satellite. And one of the things you want to watch here is, first of all, we've got what is known as the polar vortex, and that's over here, and that's going to be wrapping its way around and kind of dipping down toward the Great Lakes. At the same time, we've got a little system right here that's going to go ahead and move off to the east and get out of the way, and that is what's going to open the door to the Polar Express, and that's going to be bringing these very cold temperatures across the Canadian prairies, and those will continue to slide down across the high plains here in the United States. And there's a lot of areas between the Canadian prairies and then going down into the middle part of the country over here where we still have some snow on the ground. So that air would stay refrigerated as it moves on toward the south. So there's a look at your upper level pattern right now. Again, here's this little ripple of energy here that's going to bring us a little bit of rain tonight as that kind of zips off toward the east. But it's this one up here that's really going to kind of move off toward the east and start to drag in that much colder air. So the upper level pattern is going to be shifting considerably as we get into Tuesday. You can see the polar vortex kind of taking over parts of the upper Great Lakes. And on the west side of that, that's basically where the slide is going to be, and that's where your cold air is going to continue to slide southward all the way down toward the Gulf Coast. So our temperatures are going to be actually quite mild today. As you look to the left there, you see the high is 66. Tomorrow, Saturday, we're going to be seeing temperatures closer to 70. And then on Sunday, these are our high temperatures. We're only expecting highs running in the mid to upper 40s. So we do know, and the script has pretty much been written, that it is going to be very cold as we go into next week, and you are going to have to go through all modes of cold weather preparation. So if you've got to move plants and you've got to wrap pipes, the things that you need to do outside today and tomorrow are really actually going to be pretty decent days to do that, where it's still comfortable outside, where the temperatures are mild. Now, it is going to be blustery on Sunday, but plants could probably wait until Sunday because I'm not expecting any freezing temperatures to start to kick in here until probably on Monday. But for you, you would probably be a lot more comfortable with temperatures in the 60s and 70s, and that's like what we're going to be seeing today and tomorrow. So today, tomorrow, and really into Sunday are your prep days. I still think you could still prep on Monday before any wintry type of weather starts to move into the region other than the cold. Now check out our temperatures as we get into Tuesday morning. And again, that's where we think some of that Gulf moisture will be able to lift inland. And if it does, the air mass does appear that it's going to be cold enough to provide a large part of Louisiana, including the Acadiana region, the chance for some wintry precip. Is it going to be sleet? Is it going to be freezing rain? Is it going to be snow? A lot of the models are leaning a little bit more towards snow over the majority of the region, with maybe some sleet and freezing rain as you get down toward the coast. So we're going to go through all of the different models. All of them have been updated. The Euro models 12Z will start to update a little bit later on, and I'll post that information on social media sometime later today. So let's just, first of all, one of the things that we like to look at with the models, and I did get a lot of questions, which is better, the GFS, the Euro, the Canadian, whatever. None of them are really better than the others. Now, these global models, the reason why we focus on these in the longer range forecast is because the GFS goes out 16 days. The Euro goes out 15 days every other run and 6 days every other run. And then the Canadian model, I believe, goes out 10 days, and the Icon model, I think, goes out 7 to 10, depending on which run it does. I think it alternates kind of like what the Euro does. So usually these long-range models is where we can, see that there's something that might be happening. So that's kind of the initial way we do the forecast. And the next thing we're going to start to look for is the consistency from model run to model run. Now, the GFS runs 4 times a day. So this is the model run that went last night. So this would have been yesterday evening. And this is the forecast map that we're seeing here for Tuesday going into Wednesday. And you can see that it is providing most of Acadiana with snowfall. And then the next run that ran overnight last night is also very similar to the one that I just showed you previously. So we are looking at the possibility of wintry precip. Most of the area would be in the snow mode for Tuesday and Wednesday, according to the model that ran overnight. Now, this is the most recent model that just finished up a little while ago. And again, you can see that there's pretty good coverage of snow across Acadiana, although there's a little mix of rain and freezing rain as you get over towards southeastern Louisiana. And yesterday, the GFS completely backed off on any winter precip, but then started to buy into it once again. And the GFS was really the first one to call for significant snowfall earlier in the week. Then, as I said, it kind of backed away yesterday and really was kind of going with a non-event. And then yesterday afternoon, we started to see some hints that it was trending back toward more of a winter type of pattern. So the GFS is definitely back on board for the last 3 model runs as far as it goes with winter type of precipitation. Now, I am going to show you some of the GFS snowfall totals. Now, you also have to remember that snowfall totals can be different depending on if you have a wet snow or a dry snow. And I know you're out there saying, well, all snow is wet because it is made out of water, obviously. But when you have drier, colder air, the snow ends up being fluffier. That's the stuff that the skiers like out west. But in the eastern half of the country, you tend to get more of what we would consider a wet snow. There's a little bit more liquid to the ratio there. So this is a 10-to-1 ratio, which basically it says if you have an inch of liquid water, like an inch of rain, that would equate to 10 inches of snow. But it doesn't always have that ratio. And here along the Gulf Coast, that ratio is probably going to be more 6-to-1 in that range. So it's going to really be wet. It's going to really pack down. And it's also going to be quite heavy. And even though most of the models are showing snow, which would be the best case scenario when it comes to winter weather across Acadiana, nobody wants sleet, and we certainly don't want to see an ice storm. These heavy snows can weigh down branches, and they can also weigh down power lines. You also have to remember here in Acadiana, we have a lot of vegetation that still has foliage on it. Leaves are still on a lot of the trees, our live oaks, and there's several other kinds of trees and plants that still have foliage on them. But areas where you tend to get more, snow every single winter, let's say across the Midwest, literally all of your trees and plants are in the dormant mode. There are no leaves, so there's nothing for the snow to kind of get caught on except for the branches. So you don't worry about the weight of the snow quite as much across parts of the Midwest. But here in the south, because we've got a lot more foliage on the trees, some of this snow, and you get that higher liquid content to it, can be quite heavy, and that can weigh down some of your trees, which unfortunately could bring down some branches, which unfortunately could bring down some power lines. So you do need to prepare, even with snow, for the possibility of some power outages, and I think that would be our worst case scenario. I also wanted to show you the soundings here. Well, real quick, I just wanted to show you that the heavier amounts of snow are forecast across Acadiana and then back toward Toledo Bend. So remember this, because I'm going to show you the Euro, and that will also show you some of the similarities, not just from model run to model run, but between different model runs. So when you have agreement between the different model runs, then your forecast confidence starts to grow a little bit. So this is the GFS sounding for Tuesday morning, and what this is basically showing is this down here is the ground, and that is going up into the higher parts of the atmosphere. The red line is your temperature, and your green line is your dew point. When the red line and the green line are close together, like they are right here, the air mass is saturated. So if your dew point and your temperature are right next to each other, or the same temperature, let's say the dew point and the temperature are both 60, for example, then your humidity is 100%. The farther away those numbers go, the lower your percentage of humidity will be. But when they're right on top of each other, like we're looking at right here, that tells me that pretty much the lower parts of the atmosphere are saturated. So we are going to be seeing precipitation happening. The next thing you want to look at is this line right there. You see that? Sorry about this telestrator, but you see that 0 right there? That's 0 degrees Celsius, or freezing, 32 degrees. So there is your freezing line, and anything that's over here is above freezing, and anything that's over here is below freezing. And you can see that this entire line pretty much here stays to the left of that line. So that means the entire column of air is below freezing. Therefore, it should be snow, and it would stick too, because the temperature at the surface would be below freezing as well. So that is an indication of snow, and that's the forecast for Tuesday morning into Tuesday afternoon. So let's move on to the Euro now, and this is yesterday's Euro. And the forecast time frame is for Tuesday going into Wednesday of next week. And you can see yesterday's Euro was significant snow across Acadiana. The one that ran overnight last night, still producing snow. And you'll probably notice that these model runs are pretty close to what the GFS is showing now. And the one that we had early this morning, this is the 6Z model from early this morning, it's also showing snow. So the GFS has 3 model runs in a row that are showing snow, and the Euro has 3 model runs in a row that is showing snow. Now look at this. This is the Euro snow totals. Remember, I wanted to show you the GFS. Look at the similarities where the heavier amounts of snow are, stretching from east central Texas up through Toledo Bend and into central Louisiana, but you've got accumulation that covers almost all of the Acadiana region. And look at that, there's your GFS. It's kind of starting to highlight that area of southwestern Louisiana with the heaviest amounts there, a little bit closer to Toledo Bend. So that's some of the similarities that we like to look at between models. And I'm going to show you the Canadian and the Icon as well. And you'll be kind of amazed how, you know, the last couple of days the models have been all over the place, total disagreement. And now today, they all seem to be kind of lining up a little bit. And when you do see that, your forecast confidence starts to go up. Now here's that Euro sounding. And again, just like the GFS, we're talking about this is the ground down here. This is going up into the top of the atmosphere as you go up. Here is your 0 degree line. That's the line, this dotted line right there is your 0 degree line right there. I don't know if this is ever going to work, but there's your line. And you can see everything here, surface temperature 27, and everything to the left of that line is below that 0 degrees Celsius mark, so below freezing. So again, the entire column would be below freezing, so that means any precipitation that falls through there would fall in the form of snow. There's no warming in the middle or in the lower levels that could melt it briefly and then you end up with freezing rain kind of situation. But the Euro and the GFS, at least the sounding forecasts for those days on Tuesday morning, are indicating all snow. Now let's move on to the Jeffs model, and this is our long-range ensemble model. And if you are unfamiliar with what an ensemble model is, it's different than the Euro and the GFS and the Icon and the Canadian. Those are deterministic models. So whenever it shows a forecast time period, let's say for today at noon, that's kind of like their final solution. It's their final answer, and there's no other things that could possibly happen. Well, the ensembles give you several different scenarios based on little tweaks because there's always something that's in the atmosphere that, screws up your forecast somehow. So the ensembles kind of help you see a whole bunch of different situations, and then you can kind of get an average of all of those. And as you can see, when you're looking at the 20 different runs, nearly all of them have some sort of wintry precipitation here in the Acadiana region or across much of South Louisiana. There's only like 2 or 3 or 4 or so of these graphics that are showing no precipitation. All the rest of them are showing pretty much snow or freezing rain. And all of these are also showing the possibility of some accumulation. At least most of them, I would say about 75%, are showing that we'll see some accumulation. And we've got other ensemble models, but they're the shorter range ones, and we're not quite in that Tuesday window yet, but over the weekend, we'll be able to grab onto those. And that's what we do as meteorologists. You start with the long range models, and then you add in the medium range models, and then you add in the short range models as you get closer to the event, and all of those put together help to give you a clearer picture of what the forecast will be. And look, even when you get down to less than 12 hours, there's still other things that can screw up your forecast. So, it's not necessarily set in stone, especially when it comes to predicting winter weather here in Louisiana, because A, we don't get a lot of experience as meteorologists to predict this kind of weather. And at the same time, it happens so rarely that the models don't have a lot of data to go on to help predict this. So that's why you're going to see a wide range of solutions. But here's the average, and I will say the ensemble suite here has increased the amount of accumulating snow here in Louisiana compared to the model runs we had yesterday. Most of them were going with a trace, maybe up to 2 inches. And now we've got some of these that are socking in with a good 4 or 5. So the Jeff's model right now is really starting to buy on, just like the Euro as well as the GFS. So again, I've got 3 models here that are showing a pretty decent chance that we're going to see some kind of accumulation across Acadiana. But again, it's going to all be a part of that water ratio of whether we get 10 inches of snow or whether we get 2 or something like that. So again, it's going to be a wet snow. So a lot of the numbers that you're going to be seeing here are probably going to be quite high because that snow is really going to start to pack down as it falls. So for fun, the Canadian model, and again, the Canadian and the Icon are dependable. We just don't use them quite as much as the GFS and the Euro. They're kind of the mainstream ones. And then the Canadian and the Icon kind of gives you a little extra information so that you can, help to figure out your forecast. But the Canadian model, obviously, there is showing snow over pretty much all of Louisiana with some freezing rain along the coast and then over southeastern parts of the state. And the snowfall totals here are quite impressive once again. Remember, this is that 10-to-1 liquid ratio, so the actual depth of the snow would probably be lower than this because it's not going to be a fluffy snow. It's going to be very wet. But notice how on the Canadian model, again, even though there's a little bit more of action here over southeastern Louisiana, it is still got a bullseye right here on eastern Texas and western Louisiana there south of Toledo Bend. Remember, I showed you the snow totals of the Euro and the snow totals of the GFS. So you can see all 3 of those are really kind of similar in that, with the exception with the Canadian that has a little bit more going over to southeastern Louisiana. And the Icon model, this latest run, the previous runs were really robust on the snow. The Icon model's kind of taken a turn like the GFS did yesterday and pushing more of the cold air over Louisiana and keeping more of the precip out in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's also really scaled back its forecast snowfall to just an inch or 2 here in Louisiana. But we're going to have to kind of wait for other models to run a little bit later on today because the Icon does have a tendency to kind of flip-flop back and forth a lot more than some of the other models. So that's kind of what we're looking at when it comes to it. Right now, today, tomorrow, and even Sunday are going to be good prep days for whatever you need to do to get ready for this cold snap to happen. I would recommend today and tomorrow if you need to do work outside, and then other things that you might need to prep for, you can do that on Sunday and Monday. Traveling, if this forecast verifies, is really going to screech to a halt. So hopefully you will not have to go to work, again, if this forecast verifies, because if you don't have anywhere to go, you can keep the roadways clear, and you're not going to risk yourself when you're out there too. So if you can get everything done today, tomorrow, Sunday, you can pretty much chill on Monday literally, and then you can also watch what's going to be coming, and then you'll be prepared for anything that comes in. So here are the things that you need to be doing in the next couple of days. And I'm going to start on the right-hand side of the screen because the plants are not going to be able to make it if we're going to be talking about temperatures in the low to mid 20s, which is kind of what's forecast for a large part of Acadiana. I know many of you have plants that are in the ground outside and you can't bring them in. If there's any way that you can protect them, they're definitely going to need it. If you have potted plants, I'm one who has generally all potted plants. I'm going to drag all those into the garage probably sometime on Saturday, maybe early Sunday. I might battle the cold. I like my plants to be outside as long as I can possibly keep them out there. But they're going to be inside for a number of days. And then wrapping your pipes. If you do have exposed pipes, if you live in a brick on slab, you're probably going to be okay. But if you've got some pipes that you might just be worried about, go ahead and wrap those. But if you live in a mobile home or a home that's above ground and you have exposed pipes, if you can do some kind of protection around the bottom of your home or even wrapping those pipes, it's always a good idea. And I think the chances for pipe bursting cold is going to be a little bit more likely for areas along and north of the Highway 190 corridor where those freezing temperatures might last beyond 12 or 18 hours. And you really got to have temperatures that are in the low to mid 20s, and then you also have to have the duration of the freeze last more than 12 hours before you start to really have issues with pipes. Pets, of course, you want to bring them in when it's very cold. If you have pets that are still outside or you have livestock, make sure there is some shelter and also make sure that they have enough water out there that will not freeze. And then finally, for the rest of us, try to minimize the time that you're outside when it gets very cold. And I know that's going to be really hard to do, especially if we get snow. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to be one of the ones you might not see me for a little while on social media or on videos. And, if this really does pan out and I'm, with some of these storm totals that I'm looking at, I'm going to be playing out in the snow too, just like everybody else. It's so magical because it's something that we never see here in South Louisiana. But as I said earlier, you do need to prepare for some power outages. And make sure you got the supplies that you need. Again, get what you need. Don't panic buy. We don't need, 400 rolls of toilet paper or 18 gallons of milk for 3 days. Just kind of figure out what you might need for about 2 to 3 days. Get those things. And you're going to be battling a lot of other folks that are going to be out there because there is going to be panic buying. I guarantee it. It always happens. But make sure you check on your neighbors and friends and family to make sure that everybody's okay throughout the duration of this cold snap. Well, I hope you enjoyed this winter weather update. I will be updating you over the course of the weekend too as the weather models get a little bit more in line and we get a clearer picture of what is going to be happening. But at the very least, I do need you to prepare for some very cold conditions, and I would also be prepared for some closures and probably some travel issues as we go into next week. If you like these videos, like this, and also subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on those notifications. That way you catch the updates over the course of the weekend. And don't forget to follow my social media pages, both on Facebook and X. And also thanks to the nearly 3,500 folks that have subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll be talking to you both Saturday, Sunday, and probably Monday as well. Have a good one.